Hey folks, welcome back to another Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark.
And I'm Ann.
Today we're taking a look at I Am the Fourth Wall.
I Am the Fourth Wall is brought to you by Slinky Gibbon Games. It's a game for 1 to 7 players, depending on which version of the game you're playing.
Right.
Ages 14 and up, and it lasts about 30 to 45 minutes.
All right, well let's go see if we can take on Cthulhu and his minions. I Am the Fourth Wall is a 1 versus many type of game where you're set in the Lovecraftian Cthulhu universe. There is one player that plays as the wall and everyone else is investigators trying to stop the gates from opening.
Yeah, like Mark said, one person's going to be playing the wall and they're going to be controlling this horror deck. And so these horrors are going to be popping up and there are symbols on them. There's the research and the force and the science. And the investigators are going to be trying to match cards from their hand to take out these horror cards.
Right.
And they're going to be doing all sorts of bad stuff, as you can imagine.
Incredible bad stuff.
Yeah. And so the wall is going to be taking a turn between every investigator's turn.
Yes.
You have this little turn tracker here. It starts in slumber, the ancient one is sleeping and then he's going to wake up.
Yeah.
And then there's a crescendo and hopefully
Things
the
get worse.
investigators have closed all the doors by then. All right, so let's take a look at setting up the game and really dive into these rules here. And so we'll start with the wall. So the wall is, the person who is playing the wall is going to take all of the ancient ones, shuffle them together, and pick one as their ancient. Now that player is able to look at it from the beginning, but they're going to have the card face down so that the investigators don't know who it is when you're in the slumber mode. Right. You'll take the turn tracker, you'll pick which side for 4, 5, or 6 investigators. Now one thing to note here, depending on the number of players you have, you'll always want to have a minimum of 3 investigators, even if it means one person playing as 2 or 2 people playing as 2. Yep. And then you'll start with the ancient one on the very bottom round in slumber. The wall will also need to take all the tokens. You've got the Scourge token, your Doom tokens, and your extra icons. And they'll collect 5 horror cards into their hand, and that will be their starting hand. Okay, so the final piece of setup is setting up the gates. Yes. And so what you're going to do for this is take the 5 ancient ones that you did not, the one that you didn't deal to yourself, the 5 remaining ones, and you'll take 3 of those 5 and start to arrange them in the star. You'll see the backs of the cards have these lines on them. It's pretty slick how they line up. Yep. And so you'll take 3 of them. That's where you'll start with. And the 3 represent 3 open gates. Right. So if you are an investigator, the goal of the game is to close all of the gates. And once they're all closed, you win immediately. If you are the wall, your goal is to open all of the gates. Yep. And so for the wall can't win when in slumber mode. Right. But once an eye opens and, your ancient one has been revealed, any point thereafter that you are able to open all 5 gates, the wall will win. Or if you make it to the very end through all of the rounds, through the crescendo, then the ancient one fully awakens and
it's over.
Yeah, game over at that point.
Indeed. Now, one of the things about those gates is that you can set difficulty level with that as well.
Yes.
So you could start with more open gates to make it a harder game.
Yeah, 3 is the base, but you could start with 4, you could start with 5.
Yes.
If you're really daring.
All right, now let's set up the investigators. What you're first going to do is grab all the investigator cards, shuffle them up, and deal 2 to everybody. Now, each person gets to pick one of these investigators to play.
I love that.
Yeah, right? It's so nice. So you get some options right out of the gate. Now, in any good Cthulhu game, everyone is trying to keep their sanity. And the clever thing about this game is that they're calling it marbles. And not only is it your sanity, but it also acts as your health. In the top right corner of the card, it'll say how many cards you get in your hand right out of the gate. Now, again, this also acts as your health for the game. Any investigator that goes insane then is out and you have to be replaced. So we'll look at that a little closer in a minute. But so everybody's going to get those cards. You're going to look at them, and these cards represent, again, the different types of icons that you're going to be battling the horrors with. So the interesting thing about that is that there's a ton of different combos and there's a bunch of different actions that you can perform on your turn, which it's very nice of them to have included an action reference card, because there are so many actions that are possible that you will absolutely need this.
Yeah, and there's also a player reference card for the wall, because the wall has 2 different types of turns, so each side has their actions depending on which type of turn they're taking.
Right. So you set up your cards in your play area, you're trying to keep them secret from the wall, but you can share your marbles with everyone else in the investigator team, because you might be trading and doing some different options in that way down the road.
All right, so the wall is always going to take the first turn, regardless of which version you're playing of the game.
That Cthulhu.
Yeah, you just gotta get out there from the beginning. So, like I mentioned, there's 2 different types of turns that the wall can take. It can take a wrath turn or a brood turn.
Right.
The brood turn can never be taken on the first turn, which would make sense. You wouldn't want to do that anyways. Right. And you can never take 2 brood turns back to back. So you always have to do the wrath in between. So we'll start by looking at the wrath and what that means. So you're going to start by taking a doom token. And the doom tokens are basically your way to keep track of how many action points you have to spend. You typically start with 1. On the very first turn, you'll start with 2. And there are things that the investigators can do that will give you extra doom tokens, so extra actions. And then you get to spend those actions. That's basically what the wrath is you get to spend your doom tokens. So let's take a look at those. The first choice is to delve, which is essentially drawing a card from the deck into your hand. Right. There is no hand limit for the wall.
Which is awesome, right?
Totally. Other options are to manifest a horror. And to do that, you're going to look at the number that is on the top left-hand side. That's the cost to manifest it. Typically it's 1, sometimes it's 0 or 2.
Or 2, yeah.
Yep. And now if it's 2, it just costs you 2 of your doom tokens, 2 of your action points. Another option is to trigger a horror. And again, the cost for this is going to be on the card. And this is going to be the action that's listed underneath the artwork. No, it's not the action that's in the red box. Right. It's, the main text that's there. And then the cost is on the side. After triggering, you have, not necessarily after, like, they have to be done in this order, but another option that you have is to destroy a marble. So the investigators are going to be playing cards onto the table, putting them with specific horror cards, and you can destroy those. Of course you can destroy them, right? Your final choice is your unique action, and you won't be able to do this at the beginning, but each of the ancient ones have their own special actions, and they have costs associated with them. And once your ancient one has awoken, and you know what it is, and the investigators know what it is, then you'll be able to use that unique action.
Right. It's also important to note that when you do use the action on the card, after it's been played, that the card then exhausts and turns.
Yes, it's called draining. So you just tap the card, and it means that action cannot be repeated. You can't trigger that action again until you have undrained your cards.
Right. And the way you undrain them is using
that brood turn. Yep, which we'll go over that in a minute.
Now, like we said, the investigators has their own set of actions that are different than what the wall can do. Now, right out of the gate, the one thing you can do is search, and you basically are going to go to the marble deck and draw more cards. Now, you can never have more cards than what your character's sanity allows. So then you have to make a tough choice. What do you get rid of if you do go to search and you've maxed out your cards and you're over the limit? So that's something to keep in mind. And then next thing you might do would be intervene. And intervene is where you're going to be playing cards on horrors that are out in front on the table that the wall has placed. And these are basically cards that you're going to be trying to defeat those horrors with using the icons that are called for. They can be, the magnifying glass, they can be the gun, or the science little beaker. These are the different items that you need to defeat these different types of horrors, and there's varying amounts, different numbers that you might need of these types of cards.
Yep. And if there's extra that the investigators put down, they just lose them.
They do.
Sometimes it's necessary. You just have to, waste extra points.
Indeed. And then another option is utilize. Now, utilize is when you take a card and you play it out in front of you, but you're not playing it on a horror, you're using its action at the bottom. And there's varying amounts of different things that these do. And we'll take a close look at a couple of them in a minute. And of course, every character has a unique action, and some of the characters or investigators, these actions are free. They actually are zero cost, and you can just do them as basically as an extra action on your turn. And again, with varying ability, and that's the thing, that it's very asymmetrical. All the different characters have different powers and different abilities, and you can really mix and match how you play them.
A lot of the special abilities also let you do two things, kind of like two for the price of one. So you can search and you can utilize, or things to that matter.
Exactly, which is pretty slick, really. Yeah. And another obvious action that everyone will want to do throughout the game is give or trade. So you can give up cards, but again, you have to be careful because you're basically giving up health. So if you're down to 2 cards, it's not really wise to bounce down to 1.
You don't want to lose all your marbles.
You don't want to lose all your marbles.
You'll go
insane. You'll go insane. And of course, you can exploit the rift. Now, what this means is that every character in purple on their card at the bottom, it will have a special power. And it really is a special power that benefits you. But, very powerful. But it also benefits the wall. And we're going to say Anne's the wall. So she gets an extra Doom token for us using our special abilities. Because we are exploring the rift after all, right? So it's very dangerous, but powerful.
And that extra token means that on my turn, instead of that 1 that I typically get to start with, now I'll start with 2.
Yeah. So you could end up with 3 or 4. It might be but it might be necessary in order to close gates. And really, that's the bottom line here, is that we as investigators are trying to close the gates before time runs out or before the wall opens all the gates. Of course, again, because we're talking about gates, the next action, but this actually costs you 2 action points. This burns your whole turn. You can close a gate. And the way you close gates is that you have to have one of each type of icon. And there are special cards like the Elder Sign, like so many Cthulhu games. This card is super powerful because one card will take care of a gate and will close it, which is very slick. But a lot of times you got to spin multiple cards to do that. And again, this can reduce your health or your sanity down to almost nothing to close these gates. So it's a real trade-off, trying to decide what to do. Yeah. Now, there are ways to get your sanity back, which the nice thing is there's a regroup action. And the regroup is slick because it basically allows you to tap your card out. You're going to basically skip this turn in order to gather your hand back up. And it's either 2 cards or back to your max cards. So it really gives you like a reset for that character. And
if multiple investigators are regrouping at the same time, once they're regrouped, they're free to trade cards with each other as well. So let's take a look at the Brood turn.
All right.
The first thing you're going to do is take a new Doom token, just like you did at the start of the Wrath turn. However, you're not going to be spending that Doom token as your action point during the Brood turn. You're going to save it for the next one. It's kind of, the Brood turn is kind of like the regroup for the investigators. It's like a little reset of sorts. Now, one thing to note, if you have extra Doom tokens left over at the end of the Wrath turn, you just lose them. I don't know why you ever would, but you have to spend them all.
Just spend them. I mean, really.
You want to spend them, but the token that you get at the start of the Brood turn is one that carries over because you can't spend it.
Right.
All right, so after you have the token, you are going to undrain your horrors that are out on the streets.
Basically, anything that's been tapped.
Yep, just untap them, and now you are able to use their action ability again. Trigger their action. And then after that, you are going to place the Scourge token.
The ultimate token for
it's
the
pretty
wall.
Cool.
It really is.
So the way the Scourge token works is you'll pick one of the cards out there and you'll put on here, say this guy. Now, the investigators can no longer close a gate until that horror has been defeated.
Indeed.
So they've got to eliminate him before they can close the gate.
It's basically a shield for the gate, basically, is what it ends up being.
Yep,
right?
exactly. And then they beat him and the Scourge token comes back, and then you'll be able to brood again. So it's kind of this like tug of war.
Yeah. And you really get that sense in the game, is that tug back and forth, that push and pull. It's pretty interesting, actually.
Absolutely. With those cards and with the gates, because, there's 5 of them. And so it's the tug of war between, oh, I just opened this, and oh, you just closed this, and, back and forth there. But the Scourge token is awesome because you can also focus try to get the investigator's attention on a specific card that you're, or maybe get them to ignore a card that you want to do some damage with later.
Yep.
All right, so we've been talking a lot about opening and closing these gates, this tug of war, the winning condition. Let's take a little bit of a deeper look at that. So there are a few different ways for the wall to open gates. The first one is to drive the investigators insane, make them lose their marbles, which is what you're going to be doing a lot of times. There's a ton of cards on here that says an investigator loses a marble. It'll say sometimes a targeted investigator, meaning that the wall gets to pick. Or it'll say an elected investigator, meaning
and then
that
the players have to select someone to lose a card.
So if the wall drives an investigator insane, then the wall gets to open a gate. There are also cards in the deck, so we'll take a look at a couple of them here. Cultists are one way to do that, and cultists, you'll notice their manifest cost is nothing, so it doesn't cost anything to get them out there. But the ability on the card is to sacrifice 3 cultists, or you can sacrifice the cult leader to open a gate. And when you sacrifice them, it just means that they are no longer out on the streets. They no longer need to be attacked. They just go straight to the discard pile. There's also the Gatekeeper, which is a pretty cool card. Now, he actually comes out tapped. So he's going to be drained whenever he comes out there. So he'll have to go through the whole Brood turn to undrain him. But you can, for one action point, 1 Doom token, you can sacrifice him to open the gate.
Which is totally worth it if you're playing the wall.
Totally. You want to get him out there, you want to get him undrained, and then you're going to sacrifice him and just open another gate.
Now, we talked a lot about closing gates, but you also have to close or shut down these horrors. But there are definitely bad things that can happen when you shut down these horrors. So if you pay the cost to shut down a horror, there is text at the bottom of the card in red, and this is the death rattle. And these do various things. So in this card, the Gatekeeper, this death rattle, when you destroy this card, on its way out, it will the target investigator must lose a marble. And what the target means is that the wall gets to pick which investigator loses a card. Now, if this is late in the game, you might have a situation where one investigator has 2 cards, another has 3, and somebody else has 1. And it's going to be obvious who the wall is going to pick. Because
one that has 1 marble, so you can make them insane.
You can make them insane and open another gate.
Now, I will say there are cards in the deck. They're called rush cards. And basically what they do is they can be played immediately. They don't cost any action. And they're kind of like your save the day cards.
They're an interrupt card.
And so, for example, there is the holy symbol, which is a rush that will prevent an investigator from losing a single marble. So as the wall, I may say, I want, the waitress to lose her last marble. But then the scientist may throw in that rush card and say, no, she's not going to lose a marble.
Essentially, somebody still loses a card. It's just because it's protection. It goes to the discard anyway. But the person that might have 1 card left, or the investigator that has 1 card left, is going to be saved. All right, just a quick recap. How do we put all this together? So there's a really great video that the guys put together of them playing a whole game, and you really need to go check it out. But really what it boils down to is the wall is going to take their turn. They're going to be releasing horrors upon us. They're going to be forcing us to deal with the horrors by using Scourge, or opening more gates by causing our investigators to go insane. Now, the investigators are going to go and they're going to be trying to shut down the horrors and close the gates. And again, like we've said, there's this big push and pull back and forth, and the game goes like that. And there's some really tense moments here where you're like, oh man, these investigators are down to 2 cards. You're running out of time. We got to regroup and try to come back. And basically, in those moments, you're skipping turns. And it really builds tension on how the wall is going to, just get ahead of the investigators. All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form. So again, not all the artwork or rules may be final, so keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes. Now, with that said, I really liked the tension in this game, that back and forth and that things stay really close for most of the games we've played. There wasn't any really runaway leader between the wall and the investigators. And I suspect
there's some epic moments too, where you think you're getting really close and then the tension just swings the other way. Be sure to check out their playthrough video for one of those moments.
Indeed. So I really like that aspect of this game.
Yeah,
How about you?
I love card games in general, right up my alley. And I love card games that come with, or games in general that come with varying abilities. So I love all the character cards that you have your special powers. I love that the ancient ones all come with their own thing.
Right.
And on top of that, I love that there are variants. There's this whole AI mechanism that we really didn't go into, but there are these street cards. So basically you have, these five different streets that the horrors are going to be appearing at, and then there are different things that happen depending on which street it's on. They have a pretty cool just way of handling it with this presence deck that determines, is something coming into two,
and where
which street and what's going to be activated.
Truly, it works like an AI. I mean, you don't know where things are going to pop up.
Yeah, there's all these little tweaks that they've made. So you could play this solo if you wanted. You could play multiple investigators against the AI. You could play cooperative, which is, you're going to be two investigators, I'm going to be two investigators, and then we're going to let the AI handle all of the wall. I love that there's all these little different ways they've kind of tweaked the game.
Right, but at its heart, the core is pretty much the same between those. So like we said early on in this video, once you get a handle on that, the others fall in place really well for you. So
ultimately you're trying to close the gate.
Close the gate. That's right. Or open the gate.
Or open the gate. You're the wall.
All right, folks. So if this looks like a game that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they would appreciate your support. And I think that's it from us. And until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.